Job chapter 23, verses 1 to 10. Let us read this responsibly. I shall begin reading verse 1. Handa na tatanan diha, mga igsoon? Verse 1, Job chapter 23. Then Job answered and said,
Even today is my complaint bitter. My stroke is heavier than my groaning.
Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat.
I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with arguments.
I would know the words which he would answer me, and understand what he would say unto me.
Will he plead against me with his great power? No, but he will put strength in me.
There the righteous might dispute with him, so should I be delivered forever from my judge.
Behold, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him.
On the left hand where he doth work, but I cannot behold him. He hideth himself on the right hand, that I cannot see him.
But he knoweth the way that I take.
When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold. Ang Ginoo magapanalangin kanato diha sa atuang nga pagbasa sa iyahang nga pulong. I titled this message, When God is Silent. When God is silent. For as you can see diha sa atuang nga gibasa, we would find Job struggling diha sa iyahang kasing-kasing, sa iyahang tinguha, that he would see the Lord and that he would talk to the Lord and that he would hear answers from the Lord. Of course, we know very well the story of Job and of how he struggled to keep his testimony and integrity in the midst of his troubles. We all know the devastating loss of his children, the loss of his possession, and even of his physical affliction. Add to it, dugang yana sa iyahang nga struggle, ang burden nga iyahang nadawat gikan sa iyahang tulo ka mga higala. If you can remember well, in Job chapter 1, all the devastation and destruction happened. Nawala ang tanan niya nga mga kaptangan, nangamatay ang iyahang napuo ka mga kaanakan, and thereafter, in the early part of Job chapter 2, he suffered physical affliction where he had boils from the tip of his toe up to the top of his head. Na puno sa kugang, na puno o hubag, na puno o burot-burot ang iyahang kalawasan. Unya, sa dihang nga nadunggan kini sa iyang mga higala, this is where the three friends come in. If you can turn your Bibles to Job chapter 2, and verse 11. This is where these three friends come in. And I want us to look closely at verse 11 and what does verse 11 says about these three friends. Now when Job's three friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, nakuha na to? Sa diha nga nasayra nila ang nahitabo diha kang Job, what did they do? Look on verse 11. They came everyone from his own place. Meaning, wa na sila magikan sa usa ka lugar. Gikan ni sila sa kilkilain nilang mga lugar. And then, they came everyone from his own place. Now, look at the first one. Eliphaz the Temanite. Okay? So, obviously, they come from different places. Lain-lain sila mga gigikanan. Kay si Eliphaz, a Temanite. And then what? The second one, Bildad, the Shuhite. The third one, Zophar, the Neamatite. Obviously, their identity would tell you that they don't come from the same place. They don't come from the same tribe. They come from different tribes and different places. And look on. For they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. So, kung nakita? Now, while they come from different places, they share this one burden in their heart, that they would go and what? Comfort Job. Ang ilahang timuha, ang ilahang tumong, nga ilahang bisitahon si Job. Mo kini, nga ilahang pagadasigon si Job. And look on, and that they would mourn. Now, we are too familiar with the word mourn. Sa mga panahon nga na ay mga kauban nato o mga higala nato o mga mahal sa kinabuhi diha sa ilahang kasubo, mungadto ta og muunong ta sa ilahang kasubo. That is what? We mourn with them. Niduyog ta sa ilahang kasubo. And that is what we see here. The intention of these three friends of Job, namely Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, was actually to what? Mourn together with Job. For obviously, come to think of it, all his 10 children died in one setting. So they wanted to mourn. They wanted to, kanabang, ingon pa na to, makigduyog o makiguban kang Job sa iyahang kasubo. And what else? Look at verse 11. They come to mourn and to what? To comfort. Kung may numdo mo sa tuwang lesson sa mga kabataan ni Adtong kanang Domingo, yes, this is closely related to that particular passage. That his three friends, while their original intent was to mourn and to comfort Job in his time of grief and sorrow, it turned out that their presence before Job added more trouble and added more pain and caused Job even to struggle all the more, making his life even more miserable. In other words, bisan pa man kung ang ilahang timuha dasigon o i-comfort si Job, nigawas sinuon nga nagpabugat lang inuon sila samot kang Job. They have added burden upon Job, even made his life miserable. Unya, it is in this background that we find Job seeking after God. He longed to hear from God. He wants to talk to God and bring up all his case and his questions before God, desiring nga tubagon siya sa Ginoo. Daw sa mga kanato, mga kaigsunan, nga kung kita diha sa mga lisod o mga challenging and difficult times sa atong kinabuhi, we would want to what? Commune with God, and we want to wrestle with God, and we want to hear from God. Gusto dayon ta nga makadungog og unsay tubag gikan sa atong Ginoo. And that is what we see here in the case of Job. That in the midst of all this, we find Job seeking after God, longing to hear from God, desiring to hear answers and find answers from God. But after all his efforts, sa diha sa atong gibasa, it appears like God is nowhere to be found, or seems to be so far away, or perhaps God seems to be silent. And that is our first point. Job finds God to be silent. Nga naman, tanawa na ito balik ang verse 1 of verse 2. We find Job testifying of his heaviness diha sa iyang kasing-kasing. And you look at what verse 1 and 2 says. Then Job answered and said, even today, my complaint bitter. So, gato pa ni hubaron sa binisay, bukat kay kong kasing-kasing, kay daghan kay kong issue, diya sa kasing-kasing, nga gusto gina ko ipabot sa Ginoo, and I want to hear from God. Even today, my complaint is better. My stroke is heavier than my groaning. In other words, in the midst of his grieving and sorrow, he continued to bear that heavy burden in his heart. Nga naman, kay lagi, naa na siya daan sa kasubo, naa siya daan sa kasakit, punan pa sa mga bugat nga mga pulong, gikan sa iyahang tulog ka mga higala, nga unta ang ilahang tumong ug tinguha, dasigon ug i-comfort si Job. And indeed, this situation that Job having to bear with his three friends has made even his situation miserable and complicated. Nga naman, Kaya sa tuwang nasayran, his three friends mocked and scorned him. His three friends abhorred him and turned against him. And in fact, later on, suspected and even insinuated that Job, perhaps, you may have committed some private sins. And for that reason, you have suffered all these difficulties. Ug tungod niya na, mas nibukat pag-ayo ang gibati ni Job, mas nibukat pag-ayo ang iyahang kasing-kasing, ug mas naghatag kini og kasamok diha sa iyahang hunahuna. And all this while, Job has been desiring to seek after God. Kaya nga naman, if you can have your time to read through, beginning from Job chapter 2 up until Job chapter 23, it is actually a discourse between Job and his three friends. Each one of them would bring up their issue. Now, for a moment, that unta mo diha, just to guide you. Now, go back to chapter 3. In chapter 3, gasugod na diha. In chapter 3, he started to share his misery and despair ngadto sa iyahang mga higala. If you can see in verse 1, after this, Job opened his mouth. Chapter 4, kinsa na siya nitsulti, Eliphaz, dati manay. So, nitubag kaniya ang iyang higala nga si Eliphaz. Unya, ang iyahang diskurso siyang higala ni padayon pag yun na hantod sa chapter 5. Unya, pag-human siya, pag-diskurso siyang higala, chapter 6, nitubag si Job. You look at chapter 6, verse 1. But Job answered him. Kita niya? Para ba nga makuha gininyo ang dagan ng istorya? Unya, tanawa, Job answered who? Eliphaz, di ba? Job answered Eliphaz. And his answer runs through chapter 6 and chapter 7. Pag humanyag tubag kang Eliphaz, come down to chapter 8, nitubag na po ang ikaduha nga higala. Look at verse 1. Then answered Bildad the Shuhite. Nakita niyo? In other words, ato na lang mo po, gitabangan siya sa iyang tulog ka, higala. Job, siguro yung ka, mamatarong ka, basin ba yaw na ang gigihimuhat na sa. And they accuse him one after another. Now, ay kalinti, atong gibasa kaniya, all they wanted to do is what? Mourn and comfort. But what happened? You know, sometimes mga igsoon, ingon anak, baya punta. Ang atong tuyo ba nga dasi kung data og mo comforta, unya tungod kay wala ta magamping sa atong gipanulti, nakadugang na inon tas kasakit o kasubo sa atong comfort. Nga siguro in times like this, by your mere presence, ang imo halang presensya diha, lingkuran na nimo imong higala, imong hapwapon diha sa imong iyang kilid, just to make him know and let him know that you are beside him, igo na kana, kaysa magsukit. Bugat pa kayo kasing-kasing, kay nas kasubo, namatyan untod na po ka na, bugat pa kayo kasing-kasing, kay naagdaw ang tanan niya, kaptangan, kunya, taliwa pa kayo siyang burot-burot o buti-buti. Because in chapter 2, that is what happened. He suffered a lot of boils all his body. Kunya, niabot ang tulo. Sukit-sukitan kayo. Grabe na yun ang struggle ni Job. You know, mga kaibigan, I had the opportunity to study this book, the entire book, under Dr. Reverend Pastor Bushi. Namurag subilanon nga kanang subilanon sa katao sa ato ang panahon. That's the entire story of Job. But I cannot share everything to you karon. But just to give you a background, nga imbis unta nga nilahang pagkumpot, ilahan na nito Job, kung sa asa man minimum makatabang dapit, gipuli-puli na Job. Klaro basin nagpakaroon ingnon ka lang, matarong ka sa tubangan sa tao, kunya naghimo ka mga sala. Basin ang kanang imong mga sakop, imo nang gidaog-daog, gipagpanglupig, wa nimo hatagi sa husto nga kanang kinitaan ug sweldo. You know, they've been accusing him of many things. O sa ato pang mga pinulungan karon, unjust vexation o kanang unfair labor, nga kanang may sikwan niya sweldo hektarong ba? Mo na issue aning tulo. Kung imong nanon ay karindi, Job 2 verse 11, they wanted to what? Mourn and comfort. Tanawa, si Bildad. Hangtod nga nitubag si Job kang Bildad, chapter 9, up until chapter 10. Now, chapter 11, tanawa, verse 1. Then answered Zophar, the Neamite, and said. So, gitabangan siya. Maunta ka ng mga panahon nga sa mga niana nga kasubo, the best is to just be quiet and be silent. Your mere presence in their midst, igo na nga makahatag kanila og kumput ug pagdasig nga nagikunong ka kanila diha sa ilahang kasubo. Dili kay batbat kag maayo diha unyang imong ibatbat. Makadugang man sa struggle kay og dili pa ni righteous si Job. Gipanglampurnas na ning tulog. Pamuli mo sa inyo uy. Gadugang man lang mo sa kuwang kasubo, gadugang man lang mo sa kong problema, gadugang man lang mo sa kasakit. And yet, in the midst of it all, Job maintained his integrity before God. Nga he reasoned out with them. Taliwa sa nakalilain nga ilahang giakusar o mga rason nga ilahang gipadangan nga dukan Job. Gani, coming down to chapter 23, sa ato ang text, diha na gid atong makita na because his three friends have been accusing him, have been maligning him, have been insinuating many things against him. He wanted to see God and talk to God o ngadto siya sa Ginoo mangayog hustisya. Kaya nga naman, diha sa mata sa iyang tulo ka higala, gihukma na siya. He already is condemned in the eyes of his three friends. And here in our text, we find Job desiring to seek and find God and to hear from God, justifying Him. Kaya nga naman, nasayod man ta nga si Job is so confident that he stands right before God. He's a righteous person. We've known it in chapter 1. A righteous person, a godly man who skewed evil and loved the Lord. And yet, in the midst of it all, he was maligned, falsely accused by his three friends. And all this while, he had suffered a lot in the presence of his three friends. And tungod niya na, atong nabasa kaganiya, even today my complaint bitter, my stroke is heavier than my groaning. Nga naman, all this while, now I brought you some background, all this while, come to think of it, we are now in chapter 23. Ang iyang struggle gasugod sa chapter 1, napunan ba gyud pag-abot sa iyang tulugan? Higala. Chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, hangtod chapter 23. Nga ninyo na yun siya. I can never find any comfort diha kaninyo. I want to be comforted by God. All this while, mga kaigsunan, Job has been desiring and seeking after God. But as you can see in our text, it seems like his seeking after God was to no avail. Murag wa magbunga o way resulta. At some point, Job is convinced that while his three friends condemn him, he is convinced in his heart that he will be justified before God. He wants to hear it from God. He has heard a lot from his three friends, condemning him and accusing him of many sins. Now, he wants to hear it from God. Kaya ang iyang gusto nga ang comfort niyang madawat unya gikan sa Ginoo. Apan kung atong lututukan pag-ayo ang ato ang teksto mga kaigsunan, God seems to be silent. Nga naman. You look at verse 3. Notice how Job longed for God. Look at verse 3. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat. He's talking here about God. He would want to go as near, as close as he could be to God. Because the moment he would come close to God, he would state his case before God. Gusto niya nga iyahagin ang Ginoo iyang pasultihon sa iyang estado. Kung tinuod ba yun nga makasasa siya sama sa gisulti sa iyang mga higala. Look at verse 4. I would order my cause before him and fill my mouth with argument. In other words, he wants to stand before God and present himself before God. Gani, kung imong tutukan ang mga pulong diya sa verse 3, ay verse 4, it is more of a court proceeding that I would order my cause before him. In other words, I will present my case before him. And then what? And fill my mouth with all arguments. In other words, he would reason out before God. What else can we find here? That in his longing to come before God and in his presence, where he can state his case and present his case, and even together with all his arguments, then he would long to hear from God. In other words, confident kay siya nga siya matarong gayon diha sa tubangan sa Ginoo, in contrast to the accusation of his three friends. Now, look at verse 5 now. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say to me. In other words, kampante gyud kay siya. O kung sa iyahang dungog gikan sa atoang Ginoo. Now, look at verse 6. Will he plead against me with his great power? No. But he would put strength in me. So he has that confidence in God. That is why he longs to see God and he longs to seek after God, for that would enable him to present his case before God and thereafter hear what God would have to say. Nagmasaligon siya nga, nagmalaumon siya nga diha sa mata sa Ginoo o sa isulti sa Ginoo nga siya matarong sa iyahang balaang at tubangan apan taliwa sa tanan nga iyahang gitinguha. In the midst of his earnest search, it seems like all his efforts were in vain. Nga naman, look at verse 7 now. In the presence of God, he has that confidence that what? There the righteous might dispute with him, so should I be delivered forever from my judge. Masaligon gid siya, malaumon gid siya, nga sa presensya o sa mata sa Ginoo, siya usa ka matarong nga tao, unlike what his three friends have been telling him. Taliwa ni ining tanan mga kaigsunan. Notice further how Job was so desperate to find God. Come down to verse 8. Behold, I go forward, but he is not there. And backward, but I cannot perceive him. On the left hand where he doth work, but I cannot behold him. He hideth myself to the right hand, that I cannot see him. In other words, gihimo na niya ang tanan nga iyang pwede nga mahimo, so he could once and for all find God, and in finding God, he will be able to present his case before God, expecting that God would justify him. But lo and behold, it seems like all his effort were but in vain. Daw kawang ang tanan nga iyahang gihimo, daw kawang ang tanan nga iyahang pagpanlimbasog, daw kawang ang tanan nga iyahang pagpaningkamot, that he will once and for all find God and stand before him. As I reflect upon this situation of Job, mga kaigsunan, this is very much like when we pray and when it seems our prayers are but empty. That it has fallen on deaf ears. That God is hidden from us and we feel like we are on our own. Subaya bod diha sa inyong una-una ang atong nabasa diha may tungod kang Job. Where can I find him I go forward, He is not there. I go backward, I cannot perceive Him. I go to the left and to the right. Obviously, it is an expression nga iya hanang gihimo ang tanan niyang pwede nga mahimo kung sa unsang paagi that He can seek audience before God. But as you can see in the last part of verse 8, but I cannot perceive Him. Then in verse 9, I cannot see Him. It is in this kind of situation, mga kaigsunan, diha sa ito ang mga pagkampo, diha sa ito ang pakiginabi sa Ginoo, diha sa ito ang mga pakigstorya sa Ginoo, labaw sa tanan, diha sa ito ang pagpadangat ngadto kaniya sa ito ang mga burdens, sa ito ang mga struggles, sa ito ang mga problema, ug daw sa taas-taas ng panahon, huwag kita'y nadawat nga tubag gikan kaniya. And you know what? It is when we, God's people, would succumb to that kind of feeling that we are being forsaken by God. Or we are tempted to entertain such a thought that the Lord has abandoned us. Ug tungod ni anak nga matang o klase sa mga pangisip o pangunahuna, we would then resort to consider our options. Murag taon-taon naman ako ning gipangayo sa Ginoo, taon-taon naman ako ning gisangat sa Ginoo, murag wa may tubag. Maghimo na lang po sa ako ang mga lakang. This is where we will be tempted to resort to consider our options and make hasty and unwise decision, which more often than not will just make things even more complicated. Murag taon-taon naman akong gapaabot, murag dugay naman kay niya ako ning ipangayo sa Ginoo, murag wala may tubag. Ako na lang manlibaso gani. Ako na lang liho kani. Mga kaigsunan, sa ato ang pagkinabuhi nga Kristohan, it is best that we will not entertain and consider our own options. Even when you may have your second or third option, let it be na ang imuhang second option, wait upon the Lord. Third option is wait upon the Lord. Kaysa na mag-entertain you ka o imong kagalingong mga option. Because more often than not, these options that you would consider are but a product of your unwise and hasty decision. And just when you think that it can bring you relief and bring about solution to all your problem, it will even turn out the other way around. Huwag yung makalupig kung magpabilin ta, kung magpaabot kita sa pagtubag o paglihok sa atong Ginoo. Don't you ever feel abandoned? Don't you ever feel that the Lord forsake you? Nga naman? The Lord is faithful, isn't it? Did He not promise us that He will never leave us nor forsake us? Upon, yes, I am with you and I can bear with you. There are just times, especially in most difficult and trying times in our life, that we would succumb to doubt. Oni kanunay. And in doubt, as we continue to entertain doubt, it will bring us to what? Unbelief. And unbelief, it will resort to us doubting God and unbelieving in God. It would what? Result to believing in our self. Ako na lang ani ay mahimo ko man. Just because you seem to think that God is silent. Of course, when you happen to encounter such a situation that God seems to be silent, imbis that you would give in to entertain and consider your options and make unwise and hasty decisions, the moment that you're tempted to think that God seems to be silent in all your prayers, it should cause you to examine yourself. Kaya nga naman, usa sa klaro nga kanang rason ug hinungdan nganong sa mga panahon nga daw silent o why kay makadawat og tubag gikan sa Ginoo is it could be that we have sinned against God or we have unconfessed sin in our hearts. Rather than considering your option, making hasty and unwise decision that would only make your situation difficult and more complicated, might as well take time to examine yourself. Kaya nga naman, usa sa klaro kayo nga rason o hinungdan nganong makatagamtang o magkasugat kita mga sitwasyon nga daw why tubag nga itong nadawat o nadungugikan sa Ginoo is it could be that we have sinned against God, that we have that unconfessed sin in our hearts. Remember what the psalmist said in Psalm 66 verse 18, if I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord will not hear me. Then what about Isaiah 59 verse 1 and 2? Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened, that he cannot save, neither is his ear heavy, that he cannot hear. Listen to this, verse 2. But your iniquities have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear. Now, something for all of us to consider, mga kaibigan. Kaya nga naman, sa mga panahon nga daw wa tay nakita ug wa tay nadawat nga tubag gikan sa Ginoo, it is when ang atuang tawhanon nga mga abilidad mo'y mo patigbabaw diha sa atuang kasing-kasing nga gunahuna, ang atuang kaugalingon nga mga pangagpas, ang atuang mga kaugalingon nga desisyon o mga plano mga tinguha mo'y atong ipatigbabaw. That we doubt God, and that kind of doubt would bring us to that unbelief, and that unbelief would result to what? Believing in ourselves. Ano na nga, mag-diskarte na dahil itong kagalingon, magmugna na dahil itong kagalingon, pahala na, kung sa'yo kadangatan, ani. Now, instead of making such hasty and unwise decision just because God seems to be silent, brothers and sisters, consider, when and if ever you come to a point that you think that God seems to be silent and seems to be not hearing your prayers, it should cause you to examine yourselves. Sutaan niya sa mong kasing-kasing igsoon. Check yourself. Examine yourself. For it could be that you have sinned against God and have unconfessed sin in your heart. What about Job? Now, of course, Job very well know that he has been obeying God. Job very well know, in fact, gani ang pinakahinungdan ngayon nganong nahiagom si Job niining tanan kalisod is because he was put into a test by the devil. Remember? Because it was because the devil accused Job before God. You know? Nanganana na si Job kanimo. Kaya mo siyang gi-bless pa kayo. Kuhain gani siya sa tanan. Di ba mo talikod na nimo? That was the background of all his suffering. Yet, as we have learned, in the midst of it all, Job remained true and faithful to the Lord. In fact, one of the famous verse in the book of Job is that Job chapter 1 verse 21, naked came I out of my mother's womb, naked would I return thither. The Lord give it, the Lord take it away, blessed be the name of the Lord. So alang kang Job, he don't find any reason to examine himself because he knows so well sa iyang estado nga nagsubay siya sa kabubuton sa Ginoo, iya yung gialagaran ng Ginoo. That is why, as for him, in the midst of it all, even when God is not answering, and even when he may not be finding God and finding answers from God, look at verse 11 and 12. Job chapter 23, verse 11 and 12. Look here. My foot had held his steps, his way have I kept, and not declined. Neither have I gone back from the commandment of his lips. I have esteemed the words of his mouth more than my necessary food. Now look at all those words there. My foot had held his steps. In other words, gasubay siya sa mga lakang sa Ginoo. What else did he do? His ways have I kept. Gasubay siya sa mga lakang sa Ginoo. Gasubay siya sa dalan nga gihanay sa Ginoo. And look on, and not decline. In other words, wa siya mohunong sa pagsubay sa paglakaw, o wa siya motipas. He had not declined. And what else? Neither have I gone back from the commandment of his lips. In other words, nagpabilin siya nga nagmatilmanon, nagmasinulundon sa kamanduan sa Ginoo diha sa iyang kinabuhi. Last part of verse 12. I have kept the words of his mouth more than my necessary food. Nagpabilin siya nga committed sa pagsunod, sa pagtuman sa kamanduan sa Ginoo diha sa iyang kinabuhi. Now, kini human og taliwa sa tanan niyang pagpanglimbasog nga mahinabi niya ang Ginoo, and all turn out but in vain. Apan bisan tuod sa kapakyasan niya nga makikhinabi sa Ginoo, sa kapakyasan niya nga makadungog bisan gamay nga tubagikan sa Ginoo, wa niya tuguti nga kanang tanan magpukan niya nga mawa na siya sa pagtuo sa iyang Ginoo. Look at the words there. My foot held his steps. His way have I kept and had not declined. In other words, bisan pa man sa kapakyasan, bisan pa man sa kalisod o kasakit, ang kanang ingon nimo ba nga naningkamot, gihimo na nimong tanan. And after all, sa tanan nga imuhang effort, daw ang tanan were but in vain. You know, mga kaigsunan, we are quite familiar with this situation. Nasa mga sitwasyon nga mura bitaw o mura wa may tubag, mura wa may kuan, kisam, mura, you know, mo resolbar na dayon ta, mo resort na dayon ta, kanang gitawag na to, if plan A doesn't work, plan B, plan C. If you truly trust the Lord, you don't have to have options. Trust the Lord for His plans for your life. For I know the thoughts I have toward you. The Lord has His plans. You just have to wait upon Him. Look at Job. Sa tanan niyang mga pagpaningkamot, sa tanan niyang pagpanglibasok, igo na ito, mawala na siya sa paglaom, madismaya na siya, nga mubiya na siya, kapoy. I'd rather do things my way. Diha pala yun, makakita pa kung resulta. If I could make it, then I rejoice. O dili gani, I fail. But look at Job. In the midst of all the waiting, in the midst of all the agony, that after much earnest prayer of seeking and longing, deciding to hear from God, it seems that God is silent. There seemed to be no hope and no answer in view. God seems to be silent. Apan taliwa ni ning tanan, nawad-an ba siya sa iyang pagtuo? Taliwa ni ning tanan, nawad-an ba siya sa iyang paglaom? You can see it for yourself, verse 10 and verse 11 and 12, right? And it's all because even in the midst of these trying times, Job maintained his confidence in God. Okay? When God seems silent, Job maintains his confidence. That's our second point. Job maintains his confidence. And look at his confidence in verse 10. But he knoweth the way that I take. When he had tried me, I shall come forth as gold. It is just like Job saying, Sige lang, bisan og wa gyud nako mahinabi ang Ginoo. Sige lang, bisan og napakyas ko sa paghihinabi sa Ginoo. Apan ako nasayod na siya nahibalo sa ako ang kahimtang ug sa akong sitwasyon. Look at verse 10. But He knoweth the way that I take. Unya, nagpadayon ang verse 10. When He had tried me, I shall come forth as gold. Unsa itong nakita diha? Now, kaginiha ato yung gigahinan ug pipila ka kastas gid nga panahon pagpamalandong. Tanan nga effort, mga pagpanikamot, mga pagpalimbasog ni Job, just for him to appear before God and to present his case and argument before God. But he failed in all his effort and in all his attempt. Yano nga tao siguro sama ka na to. It's a tuwalya. I quit, I give up. But not Job. In the midst of discouraging situation, in the midst of despair, Job maintains his confidence in God. Look again, verse 10, and see for yourselves three things here. Una, Job is confident that God knows him and of his condition. God knows him and of his condition. You look at what he said. But He knoweth the way that I take. In other words, iyang gidasig ko galingon. Sige lang, kung napakyas ko sa kung pagpaningkamot na makikinabi sa Ginoo, I am sure nga siya nahibaw sa kuwang sitwasyon. Yes, that's where the confidence of Job is. He knows that God knows him and all his condition. You know, mga kaigsunan, sa mga panahon nga sama ni ini, sama sa giatubang ni Job, may we also cultivate the confidence of Job. That Job is confident that God knows him and the situation that he is in. This is one truth that we should know and should take comfort in, that God knows us. This knowing of God about us is more than just knowing that we exist as one of His children. This knowing is more about personal and intimate knowing about us. Kaya nga naman, siya mo'y nagtawag na to. Siya mo'y na yung mga plano ka na to. Kung siya na po'y mo patuman o magtuman ang iyang mga plano sa atong kinabuhi. Isn't it? Siya ko'y gapilit na to. Siya'y galuwas na to. Siya'y gatawag na to. Kanak na ko sabot, nga naa siya'y plano sa ato ang kinabuhi. And that's the comfort of Job here. In the midst of all his difficult times, Job maintained his confidence that God knows him and all his condition. And this is one truth that we should know also, my dear brethren, that God knows us personally and intimately. Gani, as I often would say, God knows us even more than we know ourselves. He knows our frame. He knows our weaknesses. He knows all our struggles. He knows the storm that we are weathering. He knows the trials that we are enduring. He knows the pain that we are bearing. He knows all our grief and all our sorrow. And this should comfort us, mga kaigsunan. Nga bisan mamantuod o gialaw sa Ginoo nga nakakasalisod, o gialaw sa Ginoo nga ikaw agwanta gyud og pipila ka mga panahon nga di kang makadungog kaniya. Bantayin niya sa imong kasing-kasing nga ayaw gyud pagpakawa sa imong pagtuo, pagsalig, paglapom sa Ginoo. Like Job, ingon siya diha, in the midst of all his what? Failures, disappointments, makadismaya na. Nag-effort kang maayo. I go forward, He is not there. I go backward, He is not there. I go to the left, I go to the right. I long to see Him. Where and when can I present my case before Him? Apan, bisan pa man ni anak, desperate moments, discouraging times, Job maintained his confidence upon God. Nagpabilin ang iyang pagsalig sa Ginoo. What else did he know? He's confident that God knows him and all his condition. Ikalawa, the middle part of the verse, Job is confident that all that has happened to him is but a test. Can you see that in the middle part of verse 10? Ingon man siya, when he had tried me. Sa ato pa, kay wow siya. Nga kining tanan nga miagi o ihang giatubang sa kinabuhi is part and parcel of a trial or a testing in life. Dihay awit dito sa mga Tagalog, mga pagsubok lamang yan. Isn't it interesting? Even a carnal and a worldly mind can sing such a word. Ano na natuo mo, regenerate person ang nag-compose ng kanta? It's a secular worldly song. But it runs so like, mga pagsubok lamang yan. If the unregenerate, unconverted person can have such a thinking, why can't you? If you're a child of God. Knowing that it's but a test should encourage you to press on. Kaya nga naman, test, Robert. Are you following? And that is where the confidence of Job is, that God knows him and all of his condition, and he knows that God is putting him to a test. That all that is happening in his life and in his family life is but a trial and a test. Kaya ningon maging siya diha sa tunga-tungang bahin sa verse 10, when he had tried me. Now, have you not wondered, kinsa ba nagpahibaw niya nga pagsuway itong tanan? No one. I'm sure the devil did not tell him. I'm sure God himself did not told him. How is it that Job is able to say that all this is but a test? It is because he knows his God so well that God will never do anything wrong and evil and wicked upon his people. Nga kung ugaling may agom ka sa mga kalisod o mga pagsuway, you should know nga kana they are purpose and aim to what? Test your what? Faith. Are we following? Remember what the Bible says, no good thing will He withhold. So kung ugaling nga may agom ka sa mga sitwasyon sa kalisod, kasakit o mga kasubo, it will always be for, you should know. We have been studying this in these past few months. Kung nakibantay mo, different texts, different passages, but the thing is more or less the same. You should know this. Mga bisag pa man sa mga kasakit, mga kaguol, o mga kasubok nga atong mahiaguman, ana ay mga katuyuan ang Ginoo behind it. And that is what, look at verse 10, the middle part of it. But he knoweth the way that I take, when he had tried me. How is it that Job is able to say that he is but a trial? Because he knows his God so well that his God will never do anything wicked to destroy him. Everything that what God will do is to chastise perhaps, but to build him up, to strengthen his faith. Mao po na sa itong mga kinabuhi. Job was confident in this, that God knows him and all his condition, that God is putting him to a test. And then the last part of verse 10, that God is accomplishing something good for him. Look at the last part of verse 10. When he had tried me, look at the last part, I shall come forth as gold. Is it not something good that God is accomplishing in your life, in all the trials and testings that you are going through? You know, mga kaibigan, make no mistake, God can never make mistake. Kanang gitawag na itong mga aksidente nga mga nanghita po sa itong mga kinabuhi. It's no accident. Kanang mga kalisod nga itong giatubang. Ini sitwasyon o struggle nga inyong giatubang, atong giatubang karon. Kabahin niya siya sa ato ang mga pagsubay. You know what? God knows us and the condition that we're in, and that Job knows that God is putting him to a test, and that God, in putting him to a test, is accomplishing something good. As we go through this fiery furnace of life, we are being purified. We are being refined and purified. And so we need to understand this, that all our experiences, particularly afflictions and difficult circumstances in life, they are designed and purposed to refine us. And as we go through this period of refinement, it reveals that impurity in us, and thereafter we would come out as what? As Job has said, he had tried me what? I shall come forth as gold. Now something interesting, he could have thought about, I shall come forth as bronze. He should have said, I shall come forth as silver. No. He said, I shall come forth as gold. Have you not wondered, when you are the champion, gold medal. When you are the first, gold medal. You are the gold medalist. Yes. He is accomplishing something that is best for you. He won't settle for bronze. He won't settle for silver. He will do and accomplish something for you, that you be like us. That is what is happening. That is what is doing in our lives. So ato karon mga kahimtang og sitwasyon sa kinabuhi mga kaigsunan, be comforted. Even in those times when God seemed to be silent, even in those times that your prayers remain unanswered, don't lose hope. Wait upon the Lord. Know these things, that in everything God has His plans and purposes. Kung daw nabungol ang Ginoo, o daw gibungulan ka sa Ginoo, dawata ang kamaturan, nganay katuyuan ng Ginoo diha niana, nganong wa kadayon niya tubaga. Kung daw natintal ka, o you are tempted to think that God seems so far away and He has abandoned you, comfort yourself. God is faithful. He never abandoned nor forsake His people. Learn from Job, who maintained his integrity before God, and declaring such a confidence. But He knoweth the way that I take. When He had tried me, I shall come forth as gold. My dear brethren, in such times, when God seemed far away or seemed silent, with no answer, no hope in view, may we learn from Job in how he maintains his integrity before God, and of how he affirms his confidence in God. Siguro kita dali kay tang makapadayag sa ato ang pagsalig sa Ginoo when all things are doing well in life. Pero kung naa ka sa grabe nga kahimtang o kalisod, daw lisod kayo ang pag-cultivate ni Ana nga pagsalig sa Ginoo sama ka Job. That may we be encouraged, and may we learn from his testimony and example in how he maintained his integrity before God, and most of all, of how he affirms his trust and confidence in God, in what he said. But he knoweth the way, kanindot yung kaya, that he knoweth the way that I take. when He hath tried me, I shall comfort His people. In our life's greatest crisis, mga kaigsunan, it is best that we keep trusting our Lord. Believe in Him even when He seems to be silent. Magampo tayo mga kaigsunan.